Welcome to USA Football's Coach and Coordinator Podcast, where top football coaches from around the country share their stories, philosophies, concepts, and strategies to help you get better on and off the field. Now, here's your host, Keith Grabowski.
Hey, coaches, before we get going today, I just wanted to thank you for all you've been doing to support this podcast, and we have an incredible lineup coming up here. We have just about every major college conference represented. We have a ton of FBS coaches, Division II coaches, Division III coaches, some great high school football coaches coming on the podcast to share with you and help you grow professionally during this time. I really appreciate all of you asking your questions on Twitter. Please follow me at Coach K. Grabowski for our daily updates on our guests and your opportunity to ask questions. We will read them on the show and attribute those to you. So please contribute to the show as much as you can. I also want to talk to you a little bit about our football development model, which is something we've rolled out here at USA Football. And this is really for you to be able to help your youth football programs develop. It's about a long-term athlete development plan, something that comes off of the American development model, which is something that the USOC has put together. The idea is that we're able to teach skills in a progression starting at the youngest ages. We're also looking at the different game types we have, whether that's flag, which is non-contact, limited contact games like padded flag or tackle bar, and full contact, and the right progressions for contact teaching there as well. Be sure to check out all we do at footballdevelopment.com and check out what we're doing with the FDM, the football development model, at usafootball.com/FDM. usafootball.com. On today's Coach and Coordinator podcast, we're joined by the tight ends coach for the Thundering Herd of Marshall, Coach Kyle Segler. Coach, I appreciate you taking the time to join us here on the podcast.
No problem, man. Excited to be here and again, spread the message and lucky to be a part of this great profession, man.
Coach, before we hit record, you and I were talking a little bit about, the challenge we face right now in our country and also the opportunity it presents. And I really loved your perspective on it. And, congratulations to you and your wife. Have a new baby that you guys just brought home Saturday. So that, along with everything going on, I think just your overall perspective about how you handle things, I think I'd really like coaches to hear, your outlook on what's going on for us at this time.
Well, obviously I'm one of the few people right now that get to say my daughter will be a first generation coronial. We got millennials and, those type of people. So my daughter's a coronial, I guess, because she was born Saturday night during all this madness, but I think, so much about what we do in this business and in this profession, is just we talk to kids all the time about, how are you going to react to things? What's the perspective, in the situation? We always relate everything to football and, it's always about that next play and moving on to the next play. And, right now, I think there's like a, almost sense of outrage in our profession, especially at the college level of guys, because, spring ball is so vital and we got to develop these kids and we're losing opportunities to coach them. And, and same thing, possibly even, in our level, it may be affecting spring recruiting and going out to schools, evaluating kids. And it's just, sometimes it bothers me a little bit because, we lose perspective of what it is we do for a living, and we're the luckiest people on the planet because we get to be around kids, be around other great coaches, develop kids, and have relationships with these guys and make them better people. But at the end of the day, we're coaching football, guys, and I think sometimes you lose sight of the fact that there's people who are working at grocery stores right now from sun up to sundown, getting yelled at by people and stocking shelves, and there's, waiters and waitresses that their tips are how they keep their lights on at their house. And we're closing restaurants and we're closing businesses. And, there's just so much more stuff going on right now to think how much more important coaching football is, and trust me, I love being around my players and my other coaches, and those relationships are one of the reasons actually the main reason I'm in this business, but at the same time, like, you got your health, you got your family, and have a little bit of perspective that, this thing's bigger than us guys, and missing spring football, that's one thing for us, but I mean, how much worse could it be? We got, baseball coaches and basketball coaches and other spring sports that they had to tell their seniors that their career's over with and they're not going to get to play in their championship. I mean, think about how devastating that would be, for a basketball coach to play all the way up until your conference tournament and then have it called off. I mean, it's a lot bigger than us. And I think, guys sometimes lose sight of that. And, we got to take a step back and realize, hey man, we're blessed to have our families and our health and the relationships with our other coaches in the profession. And at the end of the day, if you have those things, we'll get through this, just like a lot of things that have gone on, and you just got to continue to grow and make yourself better during this time. How can we adapt to it? What can we do to continue to push ourselves as coaches?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing here on this podcast, is really trying to find the opportunity and the challenge here. And as I mentioned, I looked at it and said, shoot, we'll go to 7 days a week. We'll keep finding great coaches like you to come on and, spread the message and give some ideas. And you mentioned yourself that, you guys are kind of doing that, you getting together with some buddies and Skyping or getting on Zoom and developing yourselves professionally as well.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I've kind of, we talk about development, of our players, and that's one of the biggest things in this profession at the college level. It's no different in high school either. You got to develop your players, and you also have to develop as a coach. I'm a firm believer in, I don't have 10 national championship rings on my fingers. I'm not the head coach at Alabama. I don't have all the answers. So until and again, I feel like the moment you feel like you do have all the answers is when you need to get out of this business. Because that's not what this sport is not thriving the way it is based off of people who think they have all the answers. It's based off of people who are growing and pushing themselves personally and looking inward of how can I improve myself and make myself better to make the people around me better. And I think there's a lot of great guys, and we're creatures of habit, man. I know the one thing about us as coaches, we're routine guys, and you got routine of going to the office and being around guys and watching tape and doing the stuff we normally do. When you don't get to do that, you need to fill that void, and again, I think that, I'm going to be able to use this time personally. Like I said, I got several friends I've already kind of texted with about trying to, get together and talk some ball and talk some philosophy and just catch up. I think this, we're in an era right now that, technology is just limitless with what we can do. You can set your iPad up on your desk and stand at your whiteboard in your office, and you can do a clinic for a whole day. And you have the ability, although I'm not there with you, to stand up and physically show you the techniques or do the things we normally do in a clinic situation. You still can do that stuff and you can still learn. To where whenever we do, get back to normalcy and we get back to how we normally operate, then you have the ability to come out of this with something better, and if you come out of this time period with one drill, one scheme, one just creative thought, then it's just like going to any clinic. That's one thing our offensive coordinator, Tim Cramsey, and I talk about all the time. When you go to a clinic or you go staff develop with somebody, if you get one thing out of that you can use in your arsenal of tools or thoughts moving forward, then that was well worth it. So don't use this time to be stagnant and fall on your, well, we've always done things this way. That's the one thing in this profession I hate being said more than anything is we've always done it this way. Well, that's fine. The only guy that I want to hear say that is maybe Bill Belichick or Nick Saban. If those guys say it, then I still don't like to hear it, but they at least got a little bigger podium to stand on than I do, so.
That's right. Well, Coach, I have a list of questions here from some of our audience, and we're going to get to those. A really good Q&A. Before we do that, though, I wanted to talk a little bit about your path through our profession here. And, what's great about this podcast is when I talk to guys, there's certainly some similarities, but I think everybody has a unique path into coaching. And so for you, at least at the college level, this started as you were a player at a very good program at Sam Houston. So talk to us about, I guess, this start, or maybe even what was the inspiration to go into the coaching profession.
Yeah. So, well, first off, I'm a fourth generation coach. My grandfather coached junior college basketball and high school basketball. My dad coached at the collegiate level and just recently retired last year as a Texas high school basketball coach. And my brother he's a head basketball coach at Eastern New Mexico University in Portales, New Mexico. So to say that I was born into this profession, I think would probably be the easiest way to describe it. I grew up in this profession and being around people and seeing, again, everybody has their people they follow, their people they look to for guidance and for inspiration, kind of guide you along your own path, but obviously growing up in a coach's house, obviously I was raised, to do things the right way, say yes, sir, no, sir, listen to how coach is saying it, listen to what coach is saying, not how he's saying it. And also just the relationship piece. My dad is, he's older now, obviously just retired, and he's got players they're having their kids are in college. And when I see the interaction with my dad and his former players, they still call him coach and they still have that reverence for him. And that's so humbling because that's my dad, and also that inspired me, wow, what an unbelievable profession. You have the ability to impact people in such a way that this is, again, you're a mentor and you're somebody that you're going to look towards the rest of your life as someone that you're going to still seek wisdom and guidance from, and obviously it was a no-brainer for me. In high school, I kind of thought I was going to, go to college and being, blessed to grow up in the great state of Texas, there's maybe no better place in the world to coach high school football, and I thought, that was going to be my path. I was going to be a high school coach and, go into the profession at the high school level. And I was a very below average player at Sam Houston. I was a try-hard guy, limited from a DNA standpoint more than anything. But I wanted to play college football. That was something that was a passion of mine, and I knew I wanted to get in this profession. And I think having that background of doing that, I think the game is, and that's what's so beautiful about our profession. And you obviously can relate to it too, from the number of people that you talk to and deal with, with your podcast of, it's not the old hat where, well, if you didn't play, you don't really have the clout, or you don't have the verification as a coach, and unfortunately when I was coming into college, I thought that was something that was going to be big for me. If I wanted to be a well thought of coach, I had to go through and I had to play at the collegiate level, and, got done at Sam Houston and started graduate school. And I was just, in my mind, I was just going to get my master's degree so I could maybe be an administrator at the high school level and be a head coach at the high school level. And I just kind of reached out, to a startup junior college program and started coaching there after my first semester of graduate school. I got to come back to Sam Houston in 2010 when Coach Willie Fritz, who's at Tulane now, when he took over as the head coach, and I was basically an unpaid quality control for about 18 months. So I was staying at a buddy's house, couch, and working some night jobs, and kind of a lot of times you hear these, a lot of guys that are, our interns or quality controls or guys like that. Everybody's got their story, as far as how you came up and what you did, to get into this business, and so I think, that's how I got my start, and thankfully, Coach Fritz gave me the ability to, come on full time going into the 2012 season there at Sam Houston. And, it was a blessing to get to coach there as long as I did. I coached at my alma mater for 8 years basically, and having the ability to do that and won a lot of games, and, went to national championship or 2 national championships for Coach Fritz, and had that ability to, be a part of that, something special where you played in some place that's as near and dear to me as Sam Houston is, was obviously a great opportunity and really, really special. And then, going into the 2018 season, after that was over with, I had an opportunity to move on to the University of Louisiana-Monroe. Coach Matt Viator is the head coach there. He was a longtime head coach at McNeese State University there in the Southland Conference, and an unbelievable person, unbelievable football coach, and a guy that obviously, being a competitor against him at McNeese during his tenure there, they were one of the best teams in our conference and in FCS for a reason. Those guys were tough, very well coached, and had an opportunity to go be the tight end special teams coordinator there for him for a year, and loved it. Had great relationships with the staff there. Really didn't, foresee myself moving around. Obviously, being at Sam Houston as long as I was, I wasn't the guy really trying to move around a bunch, and I had my daughter. She was really 2.5, 3 at the time, and so it was kind of one of those deals that was very happy, and then had the opportunity to come back up here to Marshall University with Tim Cramsey. Worked with Tim at Sam Houston 2018, And it was, 2017. And it was, he and I just had a really great rapport. And, you kind of, in this business, it's you find people that you really click with from a philosophical standpoint and from just as a person. He and I obviously had a great relationship and just really kind of are on the same wavelength on a lot of things, whether it be, just life or football. And, obviously having a chance to come up here to a place that's got the tradition and storied history from a football standpoint that Marshall does, I just felt like it was something that I couldn't pass up. And I've been here for a year now, and it was a blast this last season. This place is unbelievable. Like I said, the tradition and the fan support, and again, no one has the story that Marshall has. And again, going through that here after a year, it's kind of you hear this a lot, in this profession. Well, you just can't really describe it to you till you go through it, and obviously the 75 game honoring the people who died in the plane crash against La Tech this year. I mean, that's a coaching memory that I'll never ever forget, and I'll cherish it being part of that, because again, it's unbelievable. It's very eerie to talk about and be a part of it, but again, really excited to be here. Had a great year last year, and obviously hoping to continue to build on the success we had last year this year.
Well, you answered all my questions about kind of the history, tradition part and what it is to be a part of that. And as I mentioned, we have some questions. The beauty of technology, right? Put out last night that you're coming on the podcast, and I have questions from 3 coaches here, about a dozen questions or so. And we'll start with the tight ends coach from Army, Matt Drinkall, sent along some questions. And if you know Matt at all, of course, there's going to be some football in there, but then there's going to be some questions that are non-football related and even off the wall. And so that's what we'll start with. He says, what's it like working for a coach with the best name?
Well, I will say this. There is only one Doc Holliday, and it is definitely, it rolls off the tongue. I'm a huge, obviously, growing up in Texas, Dad was, watching all those, Wyatt Earp and Tombstone, so obviously I'm a big Doc Holliday historically fan as well, but, it is pretty cool. Again, you got some of those guys, and, Doc's been doing this a long time. He's been at some really successful places, NC State, West Virginia, coached in Florida with Urban Meyer. And, he's been here and been really successful here, and again, this place is, it's got some unique characteristics about it. Doc's a West Virginia guy. He's very carries himself that way. I think he's proud to be from this place. This is a very blue collar state. I mean, you're in Ohio. You understand you're from. I mean, Ohio's the same way. Very, very blue collar people. Very, people that are proud of their tradition here is of hard work and of people that made something out of nothing. I think Doc kind of he wants our program to have that kind of mentality, and the kind of kids we recruit here at Marshall. We get some kids with some humble backgrounds, and I think that's why it's a fit here for these kids, is they kind of get the opportunity to come here, and again, it is a unique situation to have a head coach with a name with such a historical tie to it, for sure. So.
Yeah, definitely. What's it like in I mean, you have the history and tradition, and so when you come to a place like Marshall, you absolutely can plug into that, but every coach is going to build that culture. So, what's the culture? What's the pillars that really you guys build upon that Doc has put in place?
Well, whenever I first got here, obviously last spring around this a little bit before this time a year ago, it's just these kids take a lot of pride, and our staff and this program takes a lot of pride on that we're going to outwork people. I think kind of just where we're at. This is again, like I said, I mean, this is a very blue collar part of the world, and I think that these people, we want to kind of carry that same edge with our players, and that no one is going to outwork us, no one is going to be tougher than us, and I think that's something that we kind of really try to carry a little more of an old school mentality, just in everything, in the day-to-day operations, whether it be ball practice, whether it be, just kind of how we prepare things. And, I think obviously Coach has, carried, a lot of the ways that he's been as a head coach is carried from, obviously working for Coach Meyer. And, again, there's a lot of, we all are the same way. Hopefully someday whenever I'm a head coach, I'm going to have, pulled things from each head coach and each coach that I've been around, and so I think he's kind of made his own path But I definitely think there's some, carryover from some of the places he's been and some of the head coaches he's coached with. But, again, our number one deal, with our kids all the time is just, we're going to be tougher than the people we play. And, again, that chip on your shoulder edge, that we want to have with our players, I think is something that has obviously been kind of a staple in this place long before I got here. And obviously it'll be in place, as long as Doc's the head coach.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense that, again, when you think about schools, sometimes regionally, man, it just fits with who are these people and what are they doing. I think the hard work mentality, just like you said, fits with where you guys are at and where you want to go with things. So we'll jump back to another question here from Coach Drinkall, and he asks, what is something you're doing well in the red zone that other people should be doing?
The red zone is kind of become, that was something last year before I got here. That was a big point of contention for us offensively. And we put a lot of time into researching that and really kind of just making an emphasis of that. I think it's, situational football. You hear about, people talk about Belichick all the time, and, they go through such a in-depth look at situations and games and situational football, but we talk about it a lot, here just, offensively, is that we need to score touchdowns in the red zone. And, we improved that drastically from 2018 to this last season in 2019. And I think it's just, you got to know who your opponent is. I think you got to, to me, personnel in the red zone is such a big deal because, if you're playing an opponent that you can physically impose your will on, you can do some different things. We have our goal line short yardage package that we do here. I absolutely, we call it our full house package. I absolutely love what we're doing schematically there. I think that last year we were at a 90% touchdown rate when we were in our full house package in the goal line short yardage. So that was, again, you hear stats and guys say, oh, we were really good in the goal line short yardage. Well, what's the statistical analysis to verify that? That's, it's just conjecture if you don't have hard data to back that up. We were 90% touchdowns when we were in our full house package. I think it's just, certain teams have certain philosophies down there. I think it's, kind of an area that guys sometimes, get a little bit scared to be aggressive because, especially down there, it's, you throw an incomplete pass. Well, it's 2nd and 10. Now we're worried about, is the field goal kicker got the distance to do this and handle this? Lucky for us, last year our kicker was the special teams MVP of the conference in Conference USA. So it was Justin provided us a little bit more of a safety net there. But for us, I think again just the ability to run the football and also to make the defense defend all 11 players. I think quarterback run game is huge in that area of the field because again, there's going to be, if they're a high blitz operation down there, they want to heat you up. You got to be able to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, and you got to be able to make some one-on-one plays. If they're a softer, more, hey, we're going to drop 8, play zone, drop 7, that red zone kind of picket fence, if you will, defense. You got to be able to run the football and run the quarterback, in my opinion. And we had a good combination of that this year. Isaiah did a really good job for us, and we did some different window dressings to kind of do some similar schemes, but I think obviously, having the ability to run the quarterback in that area of the field, I think was big in our success last year, being able to, have some key possessions in those possessions and touchdowns in the red zone.
So Coach, with your full house package and especially as it relates to your position group, how many of those guys who are getting on the field in that package are your guys, are the tight end guys? Well,
last year, to be totally honest with you, last year, in my opinion, was as close to us from a personnel standpoint that I can relate to as a coach as being in the high school level. And what I mean by that is, you guys don't recruit your players. You got what you got, and sometimes you may have a really athletic offensive line in the high school level. So we're going to do some more, move the pocket. We're going to run some schemes to some misdirection and get guys on the run on the perimeter and utilize the speed of your offensive line. For us last year, we had some injuries early on in the receiver room, and it was kind of, we were very blessed when I got here. My room is obviously outside of the people in the room. I was very blessed with the guys that are in the room are also just so happen to be really talented too. And it was kind of, Armani Levias, number 15, for, the people who have watched us play or seen him on film. Armani's the big 6'4.5", 6'5", 255 pound, just really, really good athlete, kind of a new school hybrid guy, if you will. And he gave us the ability to kind of flex him out in space. I got two converted quarterbacks in my room. Xavier Gaines was a 4-star, big-time dual-threat quarterback prospect coming out of high school. So he's a guy that actually in that full house package, we split him out as the single receiver, as the X, to be able to throw him some fade balls and just kind of go up and DNA some guys. And the other, like I said, the other guys in the room, I got some just kind of dirty work guys. Devin Miller is another kid I have that's just number 83 is a do-it-all right guy. He's a Jersey kid, tough. He's if I'm in a dark alley, I'm probably going to give him a call to come help me out, because he's that throwback guy. And really, personnel-wise, you'd say technically you probably say 14 personnel is what I'd say if you want to put it, the letter of the law on it. We do sub a 6th offensive lineman to be the on-the-ball tight end in that package. So we'll have, we have the ability to have another tight end out there. But last year, really before I got here, the year before in 2018, there wasn't a really on-the-ball guy that they loved back there or loved out there in that situation to do with the things we're doing. So we added another offensive lineman out there just to kind of, again, from a personnel standpoint, what are we doing? Who is that guy? What are we trying to do with it? And it's fun, and last year was a challenge as a coach. Again, there was, several games last year, our third down package was in 13 personnel. We're in open trips or 2x2 and we're in 13 personnel and you're traveling 4, you're hoping somebody doesn't bust a shoelace or catch a cramp, because that could severely damage your game plan at times with some of the stuff we had going, but that was, again, one of the reasons I talked about earlier. I wanted to come here and get back with Tim, because that freedom to do that stuff and that trust that he has that I'll get my guys ready to perform at the level that we needed them to, I think that was a big draw why I came here, and I think, again, last year it was a blast, because as a tight ends coach, my background being an offensive line guy per se, that the skill stuff is something that, I've had to really grow as a coach and develop myself as, and to be in those situations with those guys last year, was a lot of fun to get to do all that neat skill guy, if you will, stuff with those guys last year as well.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when I started at the college level, my first year as a quarterbacks coach, and we were 10 and 11 personnel basically. And, the next year I took over as the OC, and we wanted to create more gaps. We wanted to be able to insert more blockers. And so our tight end group became a very exciting place to be. And we needed it because we had a lot of quarterbacks, we'd bring in we'd recruit, or the bigger receivers, and those guys would become tight ends. But, being able to use the personnel, you talked about 14 personnel. I love that. We actually, Coach, one time used 15 personnel. And you ask, how do you get 15 personnel? Well, we took the quarterback off the field, and it was just a wildcat, and we had 5 tight ends in the game, and it was just a lot of fun for those guys. And you talk about like the pride those guys start taking in it, and just the problems it starts to cause for a defense with those extra gaps, especially if they've been built to stop 10 and 11.
Sure. Well, I think it's the system is in place here offensively. It doesn't matter what the personnel group is. The offense is the offense. I think that's just kind of along the lines of what you're saying. It's ironic you said that. When we do our Wildcat package, Xavier Gaines, again, with his background and his speed, he's a probably true laser 4.5-ish guy at 6'2.5", 230 pounds, so our Wildcat package X is back there at quarterback, so it's funny you said that, but yeah, it's a way to, again, to not being a full speed, go a million miles an hour tempo offense, to be able to keep putting pressure on the defense based off of personnel and what bodies are on the field, because we do have the ability with those guys to get nitty gritty and get in heavier sets and get downhill and run the football. And then on the very next snap, we could be in empty and you got 3 tight ends out there. Okay, well, what are we doing? And it's just, even some of those better cover guys that are out there from an athleticism standpoint, it's just, it's the old saying, in football, big people beat up on little people. It is what it is. Armani went out there last year and, at times he just bullied kids, and I think that's something that, is that an every year thing? Is every year, am I going to have a guy in the room that can do that? Boy, I sure hope so, because I was a much better coach last year with Armani and X and those guys doing what they did. But again, how can you create some mismatches, and how can you, again, put people in conflict, because, those corners, they love that 180-pound wideout lining up out there. They go be a tough guy. All those corners are all tough guys until you put somebody out there bigger and stronger than them, and then they kind of take a look back and realize, oh boy, this is what I signed up for.
Yeah. I'm going to save Coach Drinkall's change-up question for the end of his set, but sticking with some football things. So what do you like versus rush 3, drop 8? And that's something that I've found, in helping out a high school team here locally. We saw more and more of that this year. And I mean, I could tell you, like, I hardly ever saw that for the longest time. And it seems like rush 3, drop 8 became something. So what do you like versus that?
To be honest with you, it's funny, I think football, as with anything, is cyclical. And, nowadays you're seeing so much more 3 down just because of the variations in personnel you can put defensively, variations in pressures, and different coverages. Obviously, you can play out of that stuff because of the different humans on the field. I know, especially in high school, how many times you have 4 defensive linemen that you think are GoDaddies that we got to put out on the field. A lot of times in high school, you may only have 2, so you got to have the ability to change who your personnel is on the field. And, to me, I think, it's funny you say that. It reminds me back, when Tim and I were together at Sam Houston in 2017, and it was, Stephen F. Austin's DC was a 3-3 stat guy. And, we're sitting here, we had all this great concepts in the pass game, and we could throw. I mean, Jeremiah Briscoe was already won the Walter Payton Award, and that season was going to win his second Walter Payton back-to-back. And, we're thinking about all this great stuff we can do through the air. And I'm like, Tim and I are sitting there and finally like, man, like, what are we doing, guys? Like, let's just hand the football off, and I think people are so concerned about the ability to spread the ball around and throw it. Like, sometimes as football coaches, like, don't forget what's right in front of you right here. There's 3 humans on the line of scrimmage, and we have 5, at worst, and if you like we are here and like we were at Sam Houston, you're going to have 6 to 7 blockers at times. So, let's make them do something they don't want to do. Let's just make them add people to the mix and get more people on the line of scrimmage. And then there's a reason people are doing this stuff. They're trying to compensate for something, and I think that's, in their mind, they'd rather, well, if they just run the ball, maybe we can kind of get them to get out of their comfort zone or get frustrated and then make a mistake and try to throw it into a bad situation. And it's like, hey man, just stay the course, hand the ball off and run it, be physical, get downhill, and I think that game that we, in 2017, I mean, we were, the most prolific offense in the FCS that year. And then sure enough, in that game, we ran the ball for almost 300 yards, and it was kind of like, oh boy, this is cool. We can do this too,
Absolutely. Coach, I have one more football-related question for you, and it's funny because I talk to defensive guys all the time about how do you guys create turnovers. I don't know if I've asked an offensive guy this, but what do you do to limit turnovers?
We've done some different things, and everywhere I've been, that's kind of a big, sticking point for Doc here. Obviously Doc doesn't call any plays. He's not, he's a true head coach here, so that's kind of his main sticking point, during offensive practice. If the ball's on the ground or if the ball is intercepted, that player's out, and he's subbed immediately. You go to the sideline, you do some up downs holding the football, and then after practice, there's punishment for it, because again, it's, there's no bigger issue offensively. You can do a lot of great things, but if you lose the turnover margin on offense, you're going to have a hard time winning the game. And obviously you mentioned it, defensive guys, that's all they talk about is creating turnovers. How can we be more prolific getting the ball back to our offense and creating turnovers, just from the sheer momentum of it. One thing I love, whenever I was at Sam Houston with Coach Fritz, and I haven't been to a Tulane practice, but I'm sure they're still doing it. You had to hand the football to everyone. So at a football practice with us, there was never a ball getting thrown to the manager or flipping the ball. I mean, it was, you caught the ball in pass skill, you turned and you exploded upfield, and then you found a manager, you jogged it over and you handed it to him. And as a coach, if the kid was going to flip you a ball, whether it's a drill, whether it's a team period, you just slap it on the ground. I mean, that's just, you have to instill that with the kids, that it's a constant something that they're thinking about, and with all things, kids in general, let alone athletes in general, you're going to get what you emphasize, and if you make it a really big deal to take care of the football offensively, typically, as your kids are going to understand that, and obviously I've never coached a quarterback, nor do I really care to nowadays. But that guy obviously is, he's on the front of the media guide for the reason, So you got to do a great job with that guy, just helping him make good decisions and putting him in position that he's not having to make too many high risk throws or high risk decisions to put him or the team in harm's way because he's turning the ball over. And I think that's something that you want your guy aggressive, you want him confident, but you also got to have some understanding. Like, hey man, you got the fate of the entire team in your hands every time you take a snap, so you got to make sure that guy understands the importance of that. And, I think it's, kids are prideful, they don't want to make mistakes. They want to do right. And, I think, again, you got to find that happy medium, for you and your program is, what can I do to curb this, whether it's, again, quarterback making bad decisions in the pass game or, running backs putting the ball on the ground. And again, anything when it comes to coaching, look at yourself first, okay? If I got a running back that is putting the ball on the ground a lot, obviously I have not coached him well enough on how to carry the football the right way, okay? Now, if you are coaching him the right way, you are watching the film, you are drilling that, and the kid's still doing that, well, maybe we got the kid in the wrong spot. Maybe it's time for him to go play linebacker or DB or put him in a position where he can be successful, and obviously that's speaking more on the high school level and college. If you're recruiting a kid to play running back and he's putting the ball on the ground, then that's more on the evaluation and the recruiter than anything, But again, just got to kind of just make it a big deal, make it a really big priority that it's something that's important to you, it's important to the kids, and it's something that your program's about because then obviously you're going to get the results you want.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective and really taking the responsibility as a coach. And I think it took me some time in my career, early on to realize that, you have to look at yourself always. You might get frustrated with that kid. But really, both of those things you mentioned, option A, we gotta work it better. I didn't coach it better enough. Or option B, I put him in the wrong place. Those are both on the coach. And so I think when you take an approach to that, you're always going to find a way to make your players better, even if it means moving that guy to a different position. Well,
again, I think at the end of the day, kids want to do right. They want to be successful. They want to do what's best for the team. So, it's just like, sometimes coaches and guys get all frustrated with kids, and it's like a personal thing, like oh, he fumbled it, and you're like, you don't think the kid's crushed about fumbling it? You don't think that he's embarrassed coming over the sideline with his teammates, putting their heads down and the people in the stands boo? There's enough on the kid, and I think a lot of times too, even especially in my opinion with the quarterback, or even in the kicking game as it relates to a kicker, like, you got to manage those situations the right way, because now, I'm a big golfer, in the limited time that we have off. It's like the yips in golf. You start putting it in the kid's mind and you start making it more than, hey, there's a technique flaw, we got to get it fixed. I'm gonna help you get it fixed, and kind of pump the kid up. You're gonna build something bigger than it is, and the kid didn't want to put it on the ground. He's as upset about it as you are. So let's understand that. Let's move on and let's figure out again, starting inwardly, how can I fix it to help them get better? And then obviously if it's something that's an issue that you can't get fixed with technique or with coaching, then obviously we've got this kid in the wrong position. We got to help him be successful.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have to follow up with Coach Will Hall over at Tulane when he comes on and talks with us, and I'll ask him if Coach Fritz has him doing those things still, which I'm sure the answer is yes. So
I'm not a big bet guy, but I would bet a lot of money that is still going on in New Orleans as we speak.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Last one here, a little bit of a change up for you from Coach Drinkall. What's your favorite podcast?
I think sometimes, we get super stimulated and super excited about like what pertains to us, when it comes to football. Obviously, after you reached out, I've listened to Matt's, I've listened to some other ones. I'm going to continue to listen to the stuff you're putting out. Brady Waltz and Rowdy Harper. I recruited Oklahoma my whole time that I was at Sam Houston, and those guys put on the Run the Power podcast. I love what those guys are about. Very grassroots, very just honest guys, really good people, and love their content. They kind of go all over the spectrum. It's not just about, all at times. It's, there's some fun stuff with it too. And I think those guys, Rowdy and Brady, do a great job. And then I'm a Joe Rogan guy. I think Joe Rogan's he's a little bit out of left field on some things. I think his podcast is it stimulates some creative thought and some perspectives on some things that, us as coaches don't always hear or see. And honestly, I personally, I'm in the podcast game a little bit, but I'm really trying to just truly, as of, some recent transgressions, our defense coordinator, Brad Lambert, talks a lot of, when he has opportunity to talk to the team and to our staff, about trying to just actually, read and, find some different authors and some different things that interest you. And I'm trying to improve myself in that capacity of things. We get our routine. We come home from work, we sit on the couch, we flip on the TV and kind of veg out a little bit, and I'm trying to personally improve myself a little bit more and do some more reading when I have some free time. And Ryan Holiday is a guy that I'm really into right now. He's got the Ego is the Enemy, and also is The Obstacle is the Way, are the two that I've read. I haven't got to read his third book, Stillness is the Key. But if you're a coach, if you're a person that wants to improve themselves, it doesn't really matter what walk of life you're in. His stuff is very good. It's very, very easy to read. It's very, very inspiring, and a lot of his stuff is something I'm really into right now. I'm looking forward to reading his third book here during our social disengagement period we're in right now.
Well, I'm with you there too. I actually don't listen to many football podcasts. To check in with them every now and then. I have our producer, our intern, always puts together a highlight show at the end of the week. That's the one I'll listen to, and those guys always do a phenomenal job with it. And other than that, though, it's things outside. I listen to a lot of business podcasts, leadership podcasts. I love, the stuff that Tim and Brian Kite did. Those things were great. And then, I'm getting back into reading as well. I think I've made it part of every day. So for me, I'm kind of that multimedia, right? If I have a ride that's over 15 minutes, I'm usually popping in a podcast. So, I have to travel to Indy once a month. That's a 5-hour commute, and I fill that up with podcasting, and everything goes so quick. But the reading part of it, I agree too, is something. And I know here in our house with this shutdown, there's going to be a lot of reading going on as well. So our next set of questions is from Scoop Reed, and Scoop is the NFL Minority Fellowship for the Buffalo Bills. And his first question, actually these next two coaches have a lot of tight end based questions. He wants to know how much work you do with your tight end with the pass and the run game.
I kind of go back to, when I worked at Sam Houston with Coach Fritz, we were kind of more Nevada style, Kaepernick, read zone, triple, gun, pistol. So really we were more glorified lineman fullbacks. So obviously I was put in a great opportunity as a young coach to be successful because of my background in the offensive line world to really coach those guys at a high level, and we weren't really a huge part of the pass game outside of some play action concepts and some different things, so I didn't really have to grow as a skill coach. And then, when Coach Keeler got hired at Sam and Phil Longo came in as our OC, I've told Phil this, and I've told a lot of people this, I grew a ton as a football coach in the skill part of the game, from learning in the offense and learning how to coach within that system with Phil. And I grew a ton, just from understanding drop back concepts, understanding, just coverages and the things that the quarterback sees. And, that helped me a ton, during that time of my career. And, obviously, the thing I joke about all the time, it's just like, kids love pass skill, right? All the tight ends, all the receivers, everybody loves pass skill. If we went out there and said, hey guys, we're canceling pass skill today, they'd be throwing helmets down and pouting around, they all want to do that, right? Because that's what the world, especially kids nowadays in the high school level, that's what these kids are doing in the off season. It's these travel 7-on-7 teams, and that's not real football. That's to me, I'm very anti 7-on-7 just from a football standpoint. We see all the time. I always used to joke, pass skill. You're seeing all these zone coverages and all these things, and some other places I've been. As soon as you get into full 11-on-11 team, we're in man-to-man. We're getting zone pressures and all this stuff. I'm like, well, we didn't do any of that in pass skill, So it's like, okay, so we just got all this. We got 24 reps of something we're not going to see ever, and then we get the team, and it's it's bombs over Baghdad. So it's like, okay, so for me in the pass game, I spend more time in the run game as far as individual. Just in my personal opinion, that is such a repetition-based technique, footwork, hand placement, body posture, those things to me are stuff that the room that I'm in right now is much more of a skill-oriented room. And I think you got to know who your personnel is. You know, we had the undertaking last year of putting my guys in more true open sets and doing more skill-related things in the offense. You know, I also didn't want to hamstring those guys because there's a reason they're here. There's a reason that they're special with the ball in their hands, is because they have an innate ability to do some of those things in space and skill things that I don't need to overcoach, you know. And again, some of that stuff, you know, there are some finite things in the route concepts and use of hands within the route and at the top of the route that I spend time with my guys on and coach, you know. But, you know, if you know, in modern college football, your individual time, especially as a tight end, is so limited, you know, because we're on every special team, we're in pass skill, we're doing all these different things. So it's like you got to segment the things that are of the most importance and the things that will suffer the most if we're not doing them daily. And a kid's not going to forget how to run a corner route if we didn't run a corner route in individual. Okay. He will forget, oh, now what's my footwork and what's my technique on this run concept or this block based on the front. Okay. So those are the things that, to me, I feel like if I'm going to overkill something, I'm going to overkill the run game / protection piece. And then obviously in practice and in the meetings, spend a little more time on the conceptual piece and the technique of the pass game. And to sit here and tell you that I don't work on the pass game at all with my guys, that's not true. I segment it and find the time to do it. But if I have, let's say, 5 individual periods, at least 3, maybe 4 of them will be run game specific technique and coaching, and then one of them being more of a route technique / ball skills type drill. And I think also that stems from, it's about legs. You know, I mean, you can't, my guys are 250 pounds, you know, so, you know, you can't run 5 miles with those guys and then, you know, go down the inside run and beat the crap out of each other. And then, all right, guys, hey, we're going pass skill. Let's go run around for 20 minutes. It's like, woo, you know, you gotta monitor the movement of your guys, you know. And I think the run game stuff is not as expensive from a leg standpoint and a fatigue standpoint, but you're getting quality coaching and things that are obviously pay big dividends for you. You know, you got to be mindful of, especially in season, of not just crushing your guys all through individual, to where by the time team comes around, or, you know, the important teaching moments come around, they're so fatigued that you're not getting anything out of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, I think about how we used our tight ends at Baldwin Wallace University, and, you know, kind of as you described it, reminded me a lot of the guys we had. And, you know, those guys were athletic. They're going to go and catch passes. And, you know, so we didn't necessarily have to work a ton on that. And the other thing structurally is we tried to take the decision-making part on routes out of it for him. So, for example, like on our 4 verts, we were always going to start with him. And his decision basically was, I'm going to turn and look for the ball because I'm in the seam, or I'm going to run this quarters, you know, guy over the top of me off. I mean, very simple kind of stuff. So that, because, hey, decision-making and being able to make that on the move, that's a lot of time on task, and we would rather use that in the run game, you know, that time in the run game. So I agree with that philosophy 100%. Well, moving on, Coach Scoop Reed here knew a little bit about your background. He said your dad and your brother are basketball coaches. How much basketball technique do you use in coaching the tight end?
You know, it's funny you say that. I think anything you can do to verbalize and coaching cues or buzzwords with your kids, I think is something that is, you know, is big, you know. And I think the tight end position has just evolved to, you're not recruiting necessarily a guy who's played tight end his whole life, you know, at least the places I've coached. That 6'5", 255-pound kid that can run, put his hand in the dirt, block, one-back power, he ain't playing for Coach Segler. He's going to play at Penn State, or he's going to play at, you know, Alabama. You know, I don't have those guys, you know. So all my guys historically have been multi-sport kids. You know, I've been kids who have played baseball, played basketball. And I think, you know, just all sports in general are about understanding body positioning and, you know, how to utilize that to being successful to execute an assignment. And although per se the game of basketball and football are different, I think, you know, obviously being, you know, growing up in a gym and being a basketball coach's kid, you know, blocking, you know, on the perimeter, blocking, you know, in certain times in the tight end world, even inline, is about space. It's about understanding positioning, you know. And, you know, if I'm playing basketball, you know, and I'm playing defense, it's my job to stop you from getting to the basket. You know, it's the same difference. If I'm the tight end and I'm in the slot and I'm blocking a nickel Sam, and we're running inside zone. Well, it's my job to position myself and block you in a position that I would if you were trying to, in a sense, go to the basket in basketball, and I think, understanding that body position. And it's funny, we were watching cut-ups as a staff not too long ago. There was a time that, one of my guys got in a bad position, and I teach the kind of the oh crap moment, blockout technique, so, I mean, hey, I've got whatever may happen. My feet got crossed up. I'm in a bad position. Well, nobody said if you're not blocking them, face mask to face mask with hands of the breastplate, that's going to be a non-productive block, and one of my guys literally blocked out a defensive end, and we had about an 8-yard gain, on the C-gap cutback on inside zone, so it's funny how I've learned in this business, it's so much about production, and it's all about, that's at the end of the day, what gets your guys on the field is production. So yeah, I can sit here until I'm blue in the face and tell you about how I lose sleep over the fact that, this guy's technique's not where it needs to be. And that play, that technique wasn't great. But at the end of the day, dude, did he block the guy he's supposed to block? Did he run the route he's supposed to run? Yeah, okay, well, if that stuff's not perfect, then what am I doing all day as a coach? I'm supposed to have things that I can get him better and coach him at, so I think some of those techniques, and things, and understanding of the game and of sports and basketball has definitely helped as a football coach, for sure.
Last question from Scoop Reed is, what's the DNA for your tight ends? I know you talked a lot about these guys being athletes, but if you'd say, here's really the characteristics of who these guys are, what would you say that is?
I think if you're perfect world, if you're talking about like, I'm going to go out and seek a kid or recruit a kid, to me, you have to have football savvy, and they've got to be able to think on the fly. Outside of the quarterback position, and I get, I'm a huge believer in this. In modern football, outside of the quarterback, in the college level and in the pros, in my opinion, the guys who have the most adapting on the run and thinking on the run are the tight ends. And you've got to know run game principles and run game technique. You got to know pass protections and pass protections technique. You got to also be able to run routes. Okay. Now, again, the quarterback's got a lot on him mentally. Okay. But at the end of the day, he's still catching the snap and throwing the ball, or catching the snap and handing it off. Okay. So, for me, it's, those guys that are non-fluid thinkers and they're very over-analytic, to me, struggle at the tight end position, because it's awesome to sit in a meeting room and draw stuff on the board where those circles and X's ain't moving. But as soon as you get out there and bullets start flying, things change, and I think that's one of the things I thought this group did last year. I did a great job with. I've had some really good groups in my past of in-game adjustments based off of what we're seeing. And if you're a guy who can't adapt because you're robotic and because you're not a fluid thinker, I think that struggles. Those guys struggle to be successful and productive players. Again, at the end of the day, we can sit here and say, toughness and all that stuff, and I'm a big believer in all that stuff. But, to me, guys that are good movers, good benders, I think is a big part of being successful at that position, because you do have to do different things. Typically, your bigger, stiffer guys, it's hard to do the pass game stuff and some of the run game stuff. It's just they struggle. So, for me, for DNA, I want a dynamic athlete who has some football savvy and intelligence. And, if you've got guys that have those two characteristics, typically you're going to have the opportunity for them to be productive. I steer a little bit away from, a lot of times guys, and again, this is just me personally, sometimes guys get all caught up in these, always got to be, from 6'3" to 6'7", height measurables and all that kind of crap. I don't believe that. I'm a production guy. Turn on the film. Is the kid a good player? Does he have good production as a player, whatever position he's playing? Because, again, I don't get to watch the tight ends all the time. I'm evaluating option quarterbacks. I'm evaluating 3-4 outside linebackers. I'm evaluating, kids that play outside receiver. And is he an outside receiver that's can run straight line, but he can't change direction. He can't run in cutting routes. He can't change direction, stick his foot in the ground. So, again, to me, sometimes those real long, tall guys struggle with certain aspects of the game, and yeah, you can throw them a go ball and they can go jump up and sometimes jump up and catch it, but they're going to get knocked back because that defensive end that they're going against is 6'2.5", and they're 6'7", so leverage, yeah, they've got longer arms and longer, levers, but unless they're, I haven't seen many 6'7" guys who are really good, strong, big, strong guys, that can bend as well, so I think you kind of got to find just what fits you, what fits what you're looking for, because at the end of the day, I'm not just recruiting guys to play tight end for me. I'm recruiting guys that can be a body type, that can play on special teams for us, that can be productive, in those facets of the game as well.
Yeah, you had a question about basketball, and we had that one about DNA, and reminded me of a guest we had on the podcast here, Chris Manhurst, who plays for the Carolina Panthers, has probably become one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, and he didn't put on a helmet until his first day of NFL camp. He never played football in his life, went to Canisius College that didn't even have football, and it was one of those things, being in Buffalo, somehow Jim McNally found him and passed him along to some guys to train him, and and the rest is history. Now that guy's playing in the NFL, but it's that that body type, that athleticism, same things you talked about there, really, that don't always get caught in the measurables, or thinking that you have to have that guy, find that guy in a certain place. I mean, you probably remember this if you went back, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years, there weren't a whole heck of a lot of teams in high school using tight ends anymore. And, everybody had gone to the 10 personnel game. And so even recruiting those guys was tough. I mean, most of them you might find, ended up as a defensive end or something like that on your defense. So yeah, they come from different places, but when you can find that guy and develop him, with that athletic ability, now you have something that really causes a stress, especially, as I think we're still in that era where a lot of teams start with, instead of used to be they'd have a pro set was the first thing drawn up in their defensive playbook, and they would line it and adjust from that. Is now it starts with a 2x2 10 personnel.
Sure. Well, and I think I'm a big believer too. Like again, from a collegiate standpoint, those guys don't have bad habits, right? So this guy played quarterback his whole career. He's 6'3", 240 pounds. He can run, really good with the ball in his hands. He has never blocked anybody. So obviously that's a little bit of a scary thing as an evaluator, right. But at the same time, if he's willing and he has the physical tools, there aren't any bad habits. It's not, I got coached by this guy to do this, so this is how I like to do this. It's like they're just a piece of clay, and you can mold them however you want. And, when the guys who are really athletic, who have those backgrounds like the guy you were talking about, when they do adhere to what you're coaching them to do, and they do buy into the techniques you're coaching, that's when it's like like your eyes are open. You're like, holy cow, look at this guy. I think I'm a believer in the game is so athletic. It is so changed on the defensive side of the ball. I think, taking a defensive lineman who is not necessarily the twitchiest or best defensive line prospect, but he's got length, he's got great strength, and he has good movement skills. Well, that, to me, if you're taking 4 offensive linemen in a class as a college program, I think one of those 4 should be one of those type guys. You should take an outer liar guy in that position room, because those are the guys that if you can develop them and you can teach them the position, the athletic tools they have are different than the people in the room with them. Offensive line traditionally is always the guys who've always played offensive line. They played offensive line since peewee football, high school, junior high, the whole deal. So when they come to college, it's years of, I've been coached this way, or years of, this is how I see the game, and this is my perspective of it because I've been offensive line my whole life. Well, you get a defensive lineman who is long and athletic and twitchy, and you flip him on the other side of the ball, and you can coach him how to play that position. Those are the guys that are the wow guys. Those are the guys, again, like I'm talking about with the tight end room, of those are the outer liar guys that if you can develop, those are the guys that are, and again, you can't have a room full of them. I'm not advocating that, but at the same time, you take 1 or 2 of those guys. The guy I always look to, like, again, I know he played tight end, but when I was coming out of high school a little bit before me, Eric Winston, went to Midland Lee, played tight end. He went to Miami to play tight end, and after his second year in Miami, he played left tackle. He got bigger, he got stronger, carried the athleticism from the tight end position. And you see these guys at the combine every year that play offensive line. Well, he played tight end in college when he got there, and he's running 4.8 at the combine at 330 pounds. Well, again, we're trying to find ways to put more athletic people on the field in the big skill positions. It's no different in the O-line, D-line. Some of these guys, you see the transition the same way. Again, if you can develop, if I'm a guy that's interested in the best end product, give me the best DNA to start with. Yeah, if he doesn't have a bunch of bad habits, then I can get him better and develop him and make him into somebody special, hopefully.
That's exactly it. Well, Coach, our last 3 questions come from Mitchell Shepard. He is the offensive coordinator, offensive line, and defensive line coach at Marysville High School in Kansas. And Coach, first question is, how do you utilize inline and offline tight ends?
I think for us, I think it's more of a philosophy. Again, to me, we can do on the ball tight end sets in our plays here in the offense that we have here at Marshall. We really utilize more off the ball sets just because primarily the movement of my guys. We're going to shift, we're going to motion, we're going to do some different things. And, sometimes, it's better to be in an off the ball set to do those things. We do have the ability to get a little more traditional, 2 tight ends on the ball, YY, wing set formations and things like that, which we do as well. But, really for us, it's a little more off the ball, just because, again, we're doing so many different things in the run game and in the pass game. It's just a little bit easier to execute those things from a consistent position. You kind of pigeonhole yourself schematically at times when your guy's on the ball, so you to me, I kind of feel like when he's off the ball, we just have a little more freedom and a little more liberty to do some different things. And guys are a little more comfortable with it. I think it's person to person, player to player, but, just us primarily in the places I've been, we've been a little bit more off the ball as far as our mentality with those guys.
This next question, I think, is a good one. And again, thinking about, all the things that you ask these guys to do. So what blocks do you ask your tight ends to execute, and how do you teach those blocks?
We're traditional in the run game. We're going to run divide zone, going to kick the C gap. We're going to cut off the C gap, and we're going to insert block, and then obviously we're going to block on the perimeter. I think all of those blocks carry different caveats as far as what are the things that make them pertinent. I think before anything, I go back to holistically teaching the offense to my guys. And I'm a big believer in the more the better player you're going to be, the better production you're going to have. And if I'm just teaching my guy, hey, you're going to cut off the C gap on this play, and that's the last thing I tell him, and we go out there, all right, guys, let's go get it done. It's going to be hard for him to understand why, and it's going to be hard for him to understand what techniques do I need to use to be successful to execute that. Okay, so is there an RP associated with this run call? Is it an auto give? Is there other things? Can the quarterback pull the football? I mean, there's just so many factors that you got to coach holistically football in general. Okay, because again, I want my guys outside of the quarterback room. And again, I joke about it all the time. I mean, usually the brain power in the O-line room is usually the smartest one in the building, regardless of quarterbacks or not. Okay, we can all agree to that. Okay, obviously I'm biased because I played it, so again, those are the smartest guys in the building. But I want my guys to be considered in that group of these guys know the offense in and out and know football better than anybody because we're asked to do so many different things. So to me, I think it's about the skill set of the player. I've got some guys in the past. Some of my most productive players, when I was at Sam Houston, were 6-footers, 245-pound guys that were weight room freaks. So they could go, ISO block and knock somebody's face mask off on ISO block or on split zone. Here I've got more dynamic guys. That's not how they're built. And that's these guys. I'm teaching and using more techniques about athleticism and understanding how to bend and how to get in a position to still be physical, but also utilize your technique and athleticism, and I think it's also, to me, it's so much more now about, understanding, what is the concept. Again, going back to that, and the words of wisdom that I'll take with me as long as I'm a tight ends coach, and all the purist old school guys, if the old school coaches even know what a podcast is, that are listening to this, or they're gonna spit out their coffee, is my head coach at ULM, Matt Viator, coached tight ends for a long time, and is just a very, very intelligent and just ball coach that I admire a lot. And he told me when I first got to ULM, he said, Kyle, all I need is a tie. I kind of took a step back, and I was kind of like just dumbfounded, like, what do you mean you need a tie? Like, I want knockdowns. I want guys standing over guys, who just put them on their back, and you just got that macho O-line football guy feeling about coaching the tight ends. He's like, dude, that ain't what this is about, man. Like, just get a tie. Like, I'm not asking you to take the defensive end and put him on his head. I want you to cut off the C gap, block the defensive end. So when the back cuts back, your guy isn't the guy that's making the tackle. And it's like, once that perspective was dropped on me, like, it doesn't stop how I coach them from an aggression standpoint. It doesn't stop me from getting excited if they do those things, being physical and putting people on the ground. But at the same time, like get the macho Rambo stuff out of here. You know what I mean? Like, just, is the kid being productive? Because again, you're not going to find, I haven't had the Tony Gonzalez that can, run split zone, and then run four verts and run past people. You know what I'm saying? I got a guy that's really good at one or really good at the other, or okay at both, and I think that's what you got to find as a coach is, if a kid's not great at ISO blocking guys, well, then let's quit putting them in a position to fail ISO blocking guys. Is there other things we can do? And if you've got guys like I got that can run and can catch and do some really special things, let's not put them in a position to fail just because I want to bang my fist on the board and say, well, we're a split zone team. That's all we're going to run, guys, is split zone. It's like, well, dude, these guys suck at that. So why would we put them in position to do that? Now, there's still going to be dirty work and kind of nitty-gritty stuff you're going to have to do as a tight end, and I'm not advocating getting rid of that. Like, I don't want my position group to be known as a skill group. Trust me. I want them to be, known as more of a physical, blue-collar position, not a skill guy, but at the same time, what blocks are we executing? I guess the long-winded answer is the ones that I know that they can be successful at executing.
Well, last question for you, Coach, and I think this is where it really gets fun for tight ends. So how do you incorporate the tight end into your play action game? And, we always talk about play action, how it affects those dual responsibility defenders. I think, from my perspective, when you take a dual responsibility offensive person, I know that a receiver can block at any time, but I mean a guy who is going to go and be a part of the scheme in the box and then at the same time can end up on a route. That's the opportunity for big plays. And I think we saw a ton of that this year. If you watch any of the Niners or, watch McVay, watch LaFleur, all those guys kind of from the same tree, boy, do they really know how to use tight ends in the play action game. So how do you use tight ends in play action?
Well, you're right. I mean, and there's not a college offensive coach in the country. I'd be shocked that they haven't watched the entire Chiefs season to watch what Kelsey and Bell are doing, to watch the Niners, to watch Kittle and those guys, so you're right in the sense of that is obviously at the highest level of football, that's become a huge, still it always has been and will always will be a huge part of that game at that level. But I think the biggest thing to emphasize to my guys and to make that a part of your game is you have to be able to do the dirty work. And when I tell my guys and they kind of give me that look like, well, what do you mean by that, Coach? And I'm like, okay, well, if we're going to run nakeds, right, where you're going to split zone action, come across and catch the ball in the flat, if they're not concerned with you running split zone and defeating a C-gap defender and us handing the football off and running the ball downhill on people, that concept is not worth anything. It's not good. It's not going to work, So, if you can't run block and you can't be physical and make that something that teams have to defend, your play action game is irrelevant. And I think, there's exceptions to the rule. There's some teams that are just okay to good at running the football that can be really good play action teams. But the best play action teams are the teams that can be physical and run the football. And I think that's why, here at Marshall, our running back was MVP of the league. We ran, Coach, Greg Atkins is our line coach. He does a phenomenal job with those guys. And, we ran the football very prolifically this year. And I think that's something that, you set yourself up to be more successful in that facet of the game if you can do those things. And I think also tight ends, you have to be a little bit, there's got to be some gamesmanship. I alluded to that earlier. You got to be an actor, and there's certain things that, if we're running, play action concepts where we got to block and release late or we're selling certain run game concepts to release on a route, if you don't sell that with the same posture, same demeanor, same footwork you did in the run game, although most guys on defense aren't as smart as the offensive guys, I know that's especially true for the coaches. I got a lot of defensive coaches that are good friends of mine, so I like to remind them of that, but you got to fool those guys, so you got to do a great job being an actor. And again, those are some of the fun concepts because, again, those are the ones that are the explosive plays. Those are the ones, again, last year had several touchdowns to guys in my room because of concepts based off of our bread and butter run plays, and I think that is an attribute to the offensive line and our running backs. And obviously, though, it's my guys, can hang their hat on that as well, that we made that stuff go and be productive for us as well, because again, that is the core, that is the root of play action concepts in the drop back game is, can you run the football? Do you have to defend that as a defense? And if you have to do that, which you're going to have to, again, when you're playing us, you're going to have to defend the run, then you're going to suffer some dire consequences on the back end and some play action stuff. And that's what football is alluded to nowadays. so many times defensive coordinators are trying to get an extra hat. We want to get an extra fitter. We want to get an extra guy in the box. And, it's funny, head coaches everywhere, especially, a couple times last year, it's like, man, we're struggling to run the ball. Well, yeah, there's 9 people in there. We got 7 blocking. So, it's going to be some hard treading at times with some of that stuff, but that's where you have the ability now to create some gaps and some issues on the back end in the throw game, because people are so concerned about stopping that you can't do it all. You can't defend the pass all the time. You can't defend the run all the time. And that's what offensive coaches' jobs are. We got to utilize and understand our, preparation against you to figure out, okay, here's the times when we need to take those shots. I do think times you got to be, in my opinion, to make the poker analogy, we started with the Doc Holliday question, kind of end with one, it's you got to sometimes hold your cards a little bit. You can't. We all get excited about certain play action concepts and things that we know are going to really hurt a defense. But you can't go to the well too soon, and you can't go to the well too often. You got to hold some of those things, and there's certain things that are staples in your offense and certain play action shots. You got to find that right moment, that right time, because if you do hold your cards to the right moment, those are the ones that aren't just explosives; they're touchdowns.
Well, the last question here is from me. And, Coach, you talked about so many great things here today, but for you as a coach, what's the one thing that gives your players the winning edge?
To be honest with you, it's love, man. I don't bite my tongue on this. We're in a profession that a lot of these kids, I got some great stories of kids coming from great families and 2-parent households, and, they've come from great beginnings, but I've also coached some kids that come from some really rotten situations, that don't have a male figure in their life, that don't have someone that they can trust to seek guidance from. And again, I've said this from the very beginning when I got into coaching. At the end of this deal, when I'm done coaching, if you say that I'm a rotten coach, I don't know scheme, I don't know X and O's, that's fine. But if you say that I didn't develop these kids as people and I didn't invest in them as people and love them, then I failed. And I think that's something to me that's unfortunately in our business, especially my level, is a common lip service nowadays. It's really easy to say that stuff and really easy to make that something that's like a battle cry. But if you're not doing that and you're not putting time in with these guys and caring about them as people and hugging on them and telling them you love them, at the end of the day, these dudes play football for me to put food on the table for my family. And I never lose sight of that. And that to me is something that if you carry that with you and you believe that in your heart, the kids, that is the winning edge for the kids. Because at the end of the day, if they don't love you and they don't believe in you, when it gets really hard, they're not going to execute the way they need to. And if they do love you and do care about you, and because they know you love them the same or more, then that's when you're going to get to that potential that the kid may knew that they had, maybe they didn't know they had it, But again, to me, that's something that, again, I'm kind of getting in that stage of my career where guys I've coached are getting married, and I'm getting wedding invitations and getting those guys calling me. Before my first game here at Marshall this year, I had a group text with all my former tight ends, and texting those guys, hey, love you, appreciate everything you did for me, and I'm so happy that those guys are being successful in what they're doing moving forward. Because at the end of the day, that's your legacy. It's not about wins, it's not about rings, it's about humans. And if those guys think of me the way that I think of them, and they hold me in that regard, that my dad's players think of him and still think of him, then I've done what I'm supposed to do.
Well, Coach, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time. So thank you from me. Thank you from our listeners. Also, thank you to Coach Drinkall, Coach Reed, Coach Mitchell Shepard for submitting the questions. Listeners, I encourage you to continue to do that here as we work through all these podcasts here and the extra time we have. And follow Coach Segler. It's at Coach_Segler, which is Segler. And Coach, for our listeners out there, where do you focus your recruiting?
I recruit the basically southern part of Atlanta all the way down to the border of Florida there. So I've got middle Georgia and South Georgia, and excited to hopefully get back out there to some of my area coaches. And again, all those guys out there that are listening, feel free to give me a follow, reach out. Love to talk ball and philosophy with you guys and keep moving our game forward in the right way.
Absolutely, Coach. Again, thank you and stay safe.
All right, Coach. Thanks.
Coaches, again, I want to remind you of what we're doing with the football development model. Please push this down to your youth coaches. I think this is a great way for you to get some organization and structure beyond what you've already done. Check it out, all of our program development for youth football at fdm.usafootball.com. Again, check out our systems for blocking, tackling, and defeating blocks at footballdevelopment.com. If you register with your email, you get your choice of 3 free videos. There's some great things in there. I think things that as you get going again, you can get into the summer and maybe make up on some things that you might have lost if you had a spring ball, if you had time here in the spring to work on football. Some great drills for all those phases of contact. If you're enjoying the podcast, please head over to iTunes or your platform and give us a 5-star rate. If you have a minute, write a review. We really appreciate it, and we will read your review on our highlight show that we do at the end of the week.